Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. In this video, I want to be doing another top 5 list, but this is going to be a list that I have not done yet. And as I'm sure you can tell from the thumbnail and or title, it is going to be the top 5 mid lane ADCs or Marksmen. So the thing I love about the mid lane is the fact that you can put almost any champion in this lane and somehow end up making it work. And this of course also applies for the ADCs in the game, for instance of Vayne. And with that being said, and on top of just how well my Quinn video did, I thought it would be pretty cool to make a top 5 ADC list for the middle lane. Before I go into the list, once again I want to kind of make a disclaimer. This is my personal list. These are the champions that I would personally pick if I were to pick an ADC mid. So with that being said, there might be a champion or two that you would probably expect to be in this list, but it is not. So at the end of the video, I will special mention a champion that I did not include for a very specific reason. So if you don't see your champion in this list, wait till the very end and then maybe that's the champion I will talk about. But without further ado, let's go into the number 5 spot. In the number 5 spot is the champion you've been looking at, Vayne. I do quickly want to mention that the main reason that I put her in the number 5 spot is just because I love this champion and I think she's just so much fun to play. But luckily for us, she's also quite good. So the pros is the fact that she can be quite aggressive in the laning phase because she can always do the Q reset and to activate her W. She's able to dodge abilities quite often thanks to her Q. Now keep in mind her Q dash range isn't exactly the best, for example compared to a Lucian or a Graves, but the cooldown is a lot lower, which may overall end up making you dodge more things. Using her ultimate and then using the Q for the invisibility can be a great way to juke, especially in the mid lane, since if you don't know, mid lane is the shortest lane of them all. So the amount of time that you will stay invisible is technically worth a lot more than, for example, bottom lane or top lane. She scales extremely well into the late game compared to some other ADCs, and her W, like I said earlier, is one of the best skills in the game in my opinion. And you can really abuse it in the middle lane, for instance, auto attack, Q, and then E. The cons of Vayne is the fact that she is a little susceptible to damage. For instance, if she ever gets caught or doesn't dodge a skill shot, she's not exactly a tanky champion, so she will die. And also dodging the skill shots can be a bit more difficult. The major con of Vayne mid is the fact that landing a condemn in the middle lane is a lot more difficult than bot, because there's just simply not as many walls. She doesn't bring any poke or any form of siege for her team, which arguably is something that is pretty important to bring as a mid laner. And overall, she is the more difficult of ADCs to play well, especially mid. Alright, and moving to the number 4 spot is gonna be Quinn. Now this may be a surprise to some people because I not too long ago did make a video talking specifically about Quinn mid and just praising at how good it is. And don't get me wrong, it is still extremely good, but when comparing her to other potential mid lane ADCs, I do feel like she falls off in certain aspects. But the pros of this champion mid is the fact that she plays much like an assassin mid lane, so if you're familiar with assassins and you enjoy playing them, then she may feel comfortable for you. On top of that, like any other assassin, she does snowball quite well, and she can be extremely abusive in the laning phase thanks to her passive and her E. Her W is also very nice for mid lane because it covers almost every single entry point that a jungler can come in to gank you. Her ultimate also feels very suitable for mid lane because you can roam to the jungle, to top, to bottom very quickly thanks to the bonus move speed. And there are some pretty cool juke potentials with her E ability jumping over walls or whenever a jungler comes in to gank. And really, she's just a strong champion, but she's also a very risky one. But the cons is the fact that she doesn't really fit the role of an ADC. She doesn't really bring what you would want an ADC to bring. If she does fall behind, she does become somewhat useless because her ultimate pretty much prohibits you from going into melee form or else you'll just get blown up instantly. Her Q blind will not be very useful if you're facing a mage mid, for example a Syndra. She does not have a self dash ability like a Vayne's Condemn, maybe a Lucian's dash, and as strong as she can be, she doesn't exactly bring what you would usually want an ADC to bring. But she is still listed as a marksman, so I definitely put her in this list because she does have a lot of potential. Just play her with caution. Now let's finally move into the top 3 ADC mid laners. The next 3 that I will talk about, starting with Lucian, are all very solid ADCs that bring exactly what you want from an ADC in the mid lane and just an ADC in general. They're solid champions that are abusive in the laning phase and overall scale very well into late game. So starting things off with Lucian, his passive is one of the best things you can ask for an ADC, and it works very well in the laning phase as well. Unlike the other 2 champions, he does have a self dash ability, one that actually covers some pretty decent distance. So when you're going in for the aggressive move, or you're trying to dodge a skill shot, or you're getting away from a gank, it's very useful. If you're someone that plays Lucian quite a bit, it is very important to know how to use your Q on minions in order to also hit the champion. And I do feel like it is a bit easier in the mid lane because the lane isn't as long and it's not exactly as wide. So if you bring out your protractor, you'll probably hit a lot of your Qs. And on top of that, since the mid lane is kind of a straight lane compared to bottom or top, landing your culling on your target can be overall easier unless you get extremely unlucky with the minion wave. Overall, he has a great skill set, giving him a lot of damage in the laning phase, mid game, even late game. He has a self dash, which is something that I want to note that almost every single champion I talk about in this top 5 list has as well, and he scales pretty well into late game. The cons is the fact that his auto attack range is among the lowest of ADCs, being at I believe 500. He is also somewhat mana intensive if you're going for the aggressive moves quite often in the mid lane. And the final thing is the fact that if you cannot land your Q by using the harass on minions to land it on the champion as well, you will be severely behind and you'll be missing a lot of your core damage. But overall, a very strong pick in the mid lane. Moving into the number 2 spot, we're going to be talking about Graves. This is an ADC that has been seeing quite a bit of love lately, but all for good reason. But how good will he transition into the mid lane? Well, I did try him out, obviously, and I have to say he is extremely strong. His auto attacks hurt, his Q absolutely demolishes your opponents, his E is just a better version of Lucian's now. His W is great to make most mid laners miss their skill shots, for example on a Morgana, maybe a Syndra, and overall he's just a monster. One of the main reasons I love Graves, and especially in the mid lane, is his passive, because it just gives him so much more resistances, so he can harass and trade in the laning phase and almost always come out on top. If you go in for the E, get the auto attack speed, use your W to prevent them from retaliating, use your Q for the full damage as close as possible, and then just keep auto attacking them thanks to your passive as well, not only are you dealing so much damage to most likely a squishy target, but you're not taking a whole lot in return. He's just a great ADC overall, and there's really no reason for him to not work in the mid lane either. So if you want someone that's pretty safe, that's just strong, has a lot of raw damage, and just overall a reliable ADC that you can bring into the mid lane, Graves is probably your best option. The first con is the fact that his auto attack range is 525, which is a little bit lower than the standard ADC. And you have to be really careful not to misuse his Q, because the closer you are to your target, the more damage the Q will do, based on how many shots of course hit the target. His wave clear is pretty good, but he doesn't bring the best sieging. Well, at least nowhere near as good as the number 1 ADC I have listed. And finally, making our way to the number 1 spot, I have Ezreal. I'm sure some of you have seen this champion played in some tournaments, but of course that is for good reason. He's just a pretty solid ADC to bring in the mid lane because he's safe, he has consistent damage, he has the longest poke and harass, and overall just has a lot of great abilities that synergize extremely well for mid. Unlike most other ADCs, especially in the mid lane, he's able to bring some pretty nice siege for the team. Obviously his Q has pretty good range on it, and on top of that his ultimate is global. He can kite champions for quite some time, especially if you get Frozen Gauntlet. His E is a blink type ability rather than a dash, which makes it go over more things, for instance an Azir ultimate. Landing his Qs will reduce the cooldown on your escape ability. He's quite difficult to gank because his auto attack range is 550, which is pretty decent, but a lot of the times you're just using your Q and spamming that to harass and to CS, which almost doubles your auto attack range. He does have quite a bit of damage if he uses his abilities properly, and overall, he's just a solid ADC for mid. The cons is the fact that he's mainly skillshot oriented, of course, his Q, his W, and his ultimate. And as an ADC, his W is a little it's not the best ability in the world. But thankfully, his other abilities more than make up for it. So that right there is my top 5 mid ADC list. I play these guys every now and then because it's just fun to change the pace. And if you want to try something new, or if you like playing ADCs and you want to try this as well, then definitely go for it. Now, the one champion that I did not mention in this video that I'm sure most of you probably expected is going to be Corki. Now, don't get me wrong, he's also a very strong ADC mid that brings a whole lot to the team. The reason I didn't include him in this list is because, like I said, these are champions that I would personally pick, and I just don't like Corki. I just do not like playing the champion. I have no idea why, I just don't. So that is the main reason why I didn't include him, but he is definitely a solid candidate, and if I were to include him, I'd probably put him in the top 3. So again, based on the 5 champions I mentioned and Corki as well, definitely pick 1, 2, or maybe 3 of these, try them out in the mid lane, tell me how you guys do, and write that in the comments below. Or you can always tweet me your scores. But as usual, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, learn something new, and if you did, definitely throw in a like, share it with your friends, and I hope to see you for the next video. Peace.